Hello friends, following on from my previous GodPod discussing ancient Near Eastern and Old Testament narratives, this is Granny's GodPod number 63 discussing the flood. There are at least 40 accounts of a world flood in the ancient Near East and the rest of the world, with the most common parallels between them being a destruction by water in which some human seed, often a favoured family, is saved by some means, commonly a floating vessel. We can safely assume then that the flood was not confined to a specific area, but did involve the whole world. The Epic of Gilgamesh probably has the most similarities with the Old Testament description. Do these accounts have a common origin, rather than one having borrowed from another? This is a possibility, as a Sumerian flood story is thought to be older than either the Akkadian or biblical versions. It can be argued the Bible has a more literal version, to which the pagan version adds polytheism, magic and violence, so that fact became myth. Even so, the commonality or shared features supports the historicity or factual status of the Bible version. All of the ancient Near Eastern flood stories are polytheistic. They involve many gods. The Epic of Atrahasis describes the flood as the result of humans disturbing the sleep of the gods. Mankind multiplies and becomes a nuisance. The Sumerian account has an assembly of the gods wanting to end the kingship of men. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the gods argue about the purpose of their flood, and their action appears lacking in reason. Such a lethal response shows the gods as petty oppressors. In Genesis, God answers to no other deity. The flood is his response to man's wickedness, when his patience runs out in aiming to win over mankind with lenience and long suffering. The Old Testament flood is about sin and consequences. We think of sin as immoral and selfish actions that are against God's wishes for us. No other flood story has such a moral judgment of divine justice for the wicked and deliverance for the righteous. The God of the Bible is in complete control of the water's rise and fall. This compares with the Epic of Gilgamesh, in which a storm rages like a war that terrifies the gods themselves and causes them to regret what they began. They have lost the offerings of food and drink on which they depended, and the mother goddess regrets agreeing to see the catastrophe that destroyed her people. It seems suffering was delivered on all, the gods as well as mankind. In Mesopotamian flood traditions, the Babylonian gods suffered from insomnia caused by human noise. Yet Israel's God neither slumbers nor sleeps, as it says in Psalm 121 verse 4. And being frightened by the deluge, the little g gods had ordained, makes them appear impotent or powerless. After the flood subsided, Noah's thanks offering gave God a pleasing aroma. He is quite unlike the hungry gods gathering like flies in the Mesopotamian account. Noah was chosen because he found favour in the eyes of the Lord, Genesis 6 verse 8, whereas other pagan heroes of flood stories were brave enough to save themselves, despite, not because of, their gods. Noah is mortal, while pagan heroes are often as immortal as their gods. The Bible narrative stands apart from ancient Near Eastern accounts in various ways. One example is the different ships. Noah's Ark has the dimensions of modern ships, but the Babylonian ship was an unstable cube. I'll bet that wasn't good for seasickness. Noah has the wisdom to release a raven, which braves the storm, and then a dove, which cannot remain in flight as long. In the Babylonian parallel, the hero sends a dove, a sparrow, and then a raven. In the biblical narrative, Noah is saved by his righteousness, not by bravery or wisdom. God is acting to instill human trust and obedience. The Mesopotamian accounts are crude in comparison, depicting selfish, deceptive deities fighting amongst themselves with no concern for mankind, except for the people's subservient usefulness. The Genesis account describes a God of integrity and stature, and his covenant with Noah and his descendants in the sign of the rainbow gives us confidence in his eternal presence and control. The flood account in Genesis 6-9 is written in a narrative style, as defined by the phrase, "and it was," to present events in historical sequence. This, together with the Hebrew word et, almost never occurs in poetic texts, whereas the ancient Near Eastern texts on the cosmos are described as mythic narrative. The Genesis writer relays the event in strictly monotheistic terms, but while the skeletal structure may be similar, the most far-reaching divergences are in the underlying spirit of the accounts. When we continue to read through the Bible, we can see how necessary it is for Israel to trust God in the Exodus and their travels to the Promised Land. Their trust often fails them, as does ours. I hadn't seen a rainbow for a long time, and it was both a blessing and a comfort to have 3 rainbows reported and filmed when our Queen died. One over Windsor, one over Buckingham Palace, and one over her residence in Balmoral. 2 may have been a coincidence, but 3? Author Alan Moore once said, "There is no coincidence, only the illusion of coincidence," while author Sophie Burnham has said, "Coincidence is God's way of performing miracles anonymously." So until next time, stay safe. Do please click the subscribe button. It is free, but it makes the algorithm spread these GodPods further. And if you have any biblical queries, please put them in the comments. I don't know everything, and you don't have to agree with me, but I'll try to help if I can. Bye for now.